Picture this, a falcon-headed god soaring over ancient Egypt, his piercing eyes scanning the golden desert below. This is Horus, the divine king whose story would shape 3,000 years of pharaonic rule. His tale isn't just another mythology lesson. It's a thrilling journey through divine politics, magical resurrections, and epic struggles that make modern dramas look tame. The ancient Egyptians didn't just worship Horus. They believed every pharaoh was Horus reborn. For over 3 millennia, from the first dynasty to Cleopatra's reign, every ruler claimed to be the living embodiment of this falcon god. That's some serious job security. But how did a bird-headed deity become the ultimate symbol of royal power? Get ready for a story packed with family drama, political intrigue, and magical wonders worthy of a dozen Marvel movies. We're talking divine magic, intense rivalries, and a family feud so epic it literally split the cosmos between order and chaos. Trust me, this ancient saga has twists you won't see coming. Before Horus could claim his throne, we need to understand where he came from. And it all starts with the cosmic family tree from ancient Egypt's greatest hits collection. The Heliopolitan Ennead was like the Egyptian version of Mount Olympus, except with more animal heads and significantly more family dysfunction. At the top sat Ra, the sun god who created himself from primordial waters. Picture the ultimate self-made deity, literally. Ra then sneezed and spat out his first children. Shu, god of air, and Tefnut, goddess of moisture. Romantic origin story? Not exactly, but it gets the job done in terms of cosmic creation. Shu and Tefnut had their own kids. Geb, the earth god who literally was the ground everyone walked on, and Nut, the sky goddess who arched over the world like a star-spangled canopy. These two were so passionate, they had to be physically separated by their father Shu. Talk about helicopter parenting on a cosmic scale. This divine couple produced 4 children who would change everything: Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Each had their role in the cosmic order, but Osiris was destined for greatness as the first divine pharaoh. His brother Set? Well, let's just say sibling rivalry was about to reach dangerous new heights. The entire system operated on Ma'at, the principle of truth, justice, and cosmic balance. Think of it as the universe's operating system, keeping chaos at bay and ensuring everything ran smoothly. This wasn't just philosophy, it was literally what kept reality from falling apart at the seams. Horus would eventually embody this divine order as the perfect king, but first his parents had to survive a family crisis that would make any modern dysfunction look like a minor disagreement. The stage was set for power, betrayal, and enough magical mayhem to reshape the very foundations of Egyptian civilization. Every pharaoh would later claim this divine bloodline, transforming from mere mortals into living gods through coronation rituals. Not bad for a family that started with a sneeze and some cosmic spit. But before we get to Horus's incredible story, we need to meet his legendary parents. Osiris wasn't just any god. He was the golden boy of the divine family, destined to be Egypt's first pharaoh. Imagine the most charismatic leader you can think of, add some serious magical powers, and give him the job of civilizing an entire civilization. That was Osiris in a nutshell, and he was absolutely crushing it in the ancient world's first leadership role. When Osiris took the throne, Egypt transformed from a wild, chaotic land into a sophisticated civilization. He taught humans agriculture, law, religion, and culture. Think of him as part wise king, part life coach, and part divine instructor manual for civilization. Under his rule, the Nile flowed perfectly, crops grew abundantly, and people lived in harmony. It was basically the ancient world's version of a utopian society. His marriage to Isis was the power couple arrangement of the millennium. Isis wasn't just a supportive spouse. She was a magical powerhouse in her own right, mastering healing, protection, and motherhood. Together, they represented the perfect balance of masculine and feminine divine energy. Their love story became the template for ideal royal marriages throughout Egyptian history. The golden age under Osiris and Isis was so perfect, It made everyone else a little jealous. People were happy, fed, and spiritually fulfilled. The land prospered, the gods were pleased, and cosmic balance reigned supreme. It was the kind of peaceful, prosperous era that politicians today can only dream about achieving. But you know what they say about things that seem too good to be true. This paradise wasn't just a fairy tale. It represented everything the Egyptians believed good kingship should achieve. Every future pharaoh would be measured against Osiris's standard of divine rule. The pressure was real, but their perfect world was about to face its ultimate test from the one family member who couldn't handle being left out of the spotlight. Set was the divine equivalent of that relative who ruins every family gathering. As Osiris's brother, he watched his siblings' perfect reign with growing resentment. While Osiris got all the praise for civilizing Egypt, Set ruled over the harsh desert, storms, and chaos. Talk about getting the short end of the cosmic stick. Set's jealousy wasn't just personal, it was existential. In his mind, why should his younger brother get to be the beloved pharaoh while he was stuck managing the less glamorous aspects of creation? The resentment festered until Set decided that if he couldn't have the throne legitimately, he'd take it by force. Family dinner was about to get really awkward. The plot was worthy of a modern thriller. Set commissioned a beautiful chest, crafted to Osiris's exact measurements. He threw a party and offered the chest as a prize to whoever could fit inside perfectly. It seemed like an innocent party game, until Osiris climbed in and Set's 72 conspirators slammed the lid shut and sealed it. Surprise! Set then cast the chest into the Nile, hoping to rid himself of his brother. When it was later found, Set, in a fit of rage, scattered Osiris's remains across Egypt, disrupting the cosmic order. This wasn't just betrayal, it was the first act of chaos striking against divine harmony. The Golden Age was over, plunging Egypt into darkness and disorder. But he hadn't counted on the determination of one very determined widow. The 72 conspirators represent more than just random accomplices. They symbolize the days of the year when the Nile was at its lowest, the time of drought and hardship. Set had turned the natural cycle of renewal into a weapon against his own family. But as we'll see, love and magic can be more powerful than jealousy and betrayal. When Isis discovered her husband's fate, her grief shook the very foundations of Egypt. This wasn't just mourning, it was the sound of cosmic order crying out in anguish. But Isis was no ordinary widow. She was a goddess of magic, and she was about to prove that love could triumph over loss. Her search for Osiris's scattered remains became the ancient world's most determined treasure hunt. Isis traveled the length and breadth of Egypt, following every lead and rumor. She enlisted the help of her sister Nephthys, who happened to be married to Set. Family dynamics were complicated. Together they scoured marshes, temples, and tombs with the dedication of divine detectives. Finding the pieces was only the beginning. Isis had to perform the ultimate magical restoration, reassembling her husband's body and reviving him briefly. Using her incredible powers, she pieced Osiris back together like the world's most challenging jigsaw puzzle. The magic required was so intense it established burial practices that would last for millennia. Through her magic, Isis conceived Horus with her restored husband, using divine rituals too sacred to detail. Knowing that Set would target her unborn child, Isis fled to the Delta marshes. She transformed from queen to refugee, hiding among the papyrus reeds like an ancient Egyptian superhero going underground. Her pregnancy was spent in constant danger, relying on magic and the protection of loyal subjects who recognized her divine nature. The transformation of Isis from perfect queen to grieving widow to protective mother became the archetypal story of feminine strength and determination. She embodied every woman who had lost a husband, every mother protecting her child, every person fighting against impossible odds. Her story resonated so deeply that Isis worship spread far beyond Egypt to Greece, Rome, and across the ancient world. During her exile, Isis had time to plan. She wasn't just hiding, she was preparing her son for the ultimate confrontation with Set. The quiet marshes became a training ground for the future king, and every day brought them closer to the moment when Horus would reclaim his rightful throne. Deep in the delta marshes, hidden among towering papyrus reeds, the future king of Egypt was growing up in secret. Young Horus wasn't living in a palace. He was getting a wilderness education that would make any survival expert jealous. The swamplands became his classroom, and his mother Isis was both protector and instructor in the art of divine kingship. Isis didn't just hide her son, she trained him for greatness. Every day brought lessons in magic, combat, and the responsibilities of rulership. Picture the most intensive royal education program ever designed, except it was happening in a swamp with crocodiles as neighbors. Horus learned to command respect from the marsh creatures and navigate the treacherous waters with supernatural skill. The young god's powers manifested early and dramatically. When poisonous creatures threatened, they would bow to his authority. When storms raged, he could calm them with a gesture. The boy who was destined to be the falcon god was already showing signs of his incredible abilities. Even the other marsh dwellers recognized there was something special about this hidden prince. But growing up divine doesn't mean growing up safe. Set's agents constantly searched for the hidden heir, and several close calls nearly ended Horus's story before it really began. Isis had to use all her magical abilities to throw off pursuit, creating illusions and false trails that kept them one step ahead of disaster. Living like fugitives was the price of preserving the legitimate succession. The marshes also provided unlikely allies. Local fishermen and farmers, recognizing Isis despite her disguise, offered protection and supplies. They became the first human supporters of Horus's claim to the throne. These common people understood that the rightful king was being raised among them, and they were honored to play their part in the divine plan. During these hidden years, Horus absorbed not just magical training, but also genuine understanding of his future subjects. Unlike Set, who ruled through fear and chaos, Horus learned compassion and justice from direct contact with the people he would someday govern. The marsh years weren't just about survival. They were about becoming the kind of ruler Egypt desperately needed. But eventually, every hidden prince must step into the light and claim his destiny. When Horus reached maturity, he emerged from the marshes like a divine storm made flesh. No longer the hidden child, he was now a fully grown god with the bearing of a king and the power to back up his claims. His first stop wasn't the palace, it was the divine court where the Ennead gathered to settle disputes. Time to make this official. The formal challenge sent shockwaves through the divine community. Here was Osiris's son, risen from obscurity to demand justice for his father's betrayal and his own inheritance. Horus didn't just want justice, he wanted recognition as the legitimate pharaoh of Egypt. The gods hadn't seen drama like this since the original creation stories. Popcorn sales in the divine realm probably went through the roof. The Ennead found themselves in an awkward position. On one hand, Horus clearly had the stronger legal claim as Osiris's direct heir. On the other hand, Set had been running Egypt badly for years and wasn't about to give up power without a fight. Some gods supported the young challenger, others backed the established ruler, and a few just wanted the whole mess to go away. Ra, as head of the divine court, tried to maintain neutrality but was clearly torn. He appreciated Set's strength and chaos managing abilities, but couldn't ignore Horus's legitimate bloodline. Other gods took sides based on their own interests and relationships. It was like watching the ancient world's most consequential political primary play out in real time. The initial tribunal hearings were full of legal arguments, divine politics, and enough procedural maneuvering to make modern lawyers jealous. Horus presented his case with the confidence of someone who knew he was in the right. Set countered with claims about his experience and suitability for rule. Neither side was backing down, and it became clear that words alone wouldn't settle this dispute. That's when the gods made a decision that would create the most epic contest in Egyptian mythology. If legal arguments couldn't determine the rightful king, then Horus and Set would have to prove their worthiness through a series of trials. What started as a court case was about to become the ultimate divine competition, and the winner would take all of Egypt as their prize. The divine tribunal wasn't about to settle this with a simple vote. They demanded trials to prove who deserved the throne. Think of it as the world's first reality TV competition, but with actual gods and way higher stakes. The contest began with boat races down the Nile. Horus built his vessel from stone, but disguised it with plaster to look like wood. Set, thinking he was clever, made his boat entirely from stone. When they hit the water, Set's boat sank like a rock while Horus sailed to victory. But Set wasn't giving up that easily. He challenged Horus to a transformation contest in the river. Both gods turned into hippos and dove underwater. The rule was simple. Whoever surfaced first would lose. Isis watched nervously from the shore, fearing for her son's safety. She crafted a magical harpoon and threw it into the water. Unfortunately, her aim was off. She hit Horus first. Her son cried out in pain, so she quickly pulled the weapon back and threw it again, this time striking Set. Set emerged from the water, wounded and furious. He appealed to Isis about family loyalty. "How could you hurt your own brother?" he pleaded. Isis felt remorse and healed Set's wounds immediately. This frustrated Horus, who surfaced in anger and briefly lashed out at his mother, though she was quickly restored by divine magic. The gods decided to try a different approach. They arranged a feast where Horus and Set would demonstrate their cleverness. Set had a cunning plan to outwit Horus with a magical trick involving food, thinking it would prove his dominance. But Isis discovered the scheme and warned her son. Horus cleverly turned the trick against Set. When Set called upon his magic to prove his superiority before the gods, it backfired, revealing his own deception. The gods burst into laughter as Set's plan collapsed spectacularly. The trials continued with architectural challenges. Each god had to build a temple faster than the other. They raced through construction projects that would make modern builders weep. Set focused on size and grandeur, while Horus emphasized precision and sacred geometry. The gods judged not just speed, but also divine craftsmanship and spiritual significance. Combat trials followed, featuring wrestling matches and strength contests. These weren't your average gym workouts. They involved throwing boulders the size of pyramids and lifting entire mountains. Horus relied on skill and strategy, while Set used brute force and clever tactics. Each victory was hard-fought, with neither god gaining a decisive advantage. The shape-shifting battles were particularly spectacular. The gods transformed into every creature imaginable: lions, bulls, serpents, and mythical beasts. They fought as scorpions in the desert, eagles in the sky, and crocodiles in the Nile. Each transformation brought new advantages and new challenges, creating an epic showcase of divine power. Wait until you hear about the most intense confrontation of all. It's coming up next, and it involves the most famous symbol in all of Egyptian mythology. After countless trials and contests, Set finally demanded a direct challenge. He faced Horus in single combat. No rules, no judges, just raw divine power. This wasn't another clever contest of wits. This was an intense duel that would rival any epic showdown. The two gods met in the desert, their divine energies blazing with unmatched intensity. The battle was fierce. They clashed with supernatural strength and magical force. Set's years of resentment fueled his attacks, while Horus channeled his training in righteous determination. The desert trembled from the force of their confrontation. In the heat of battle, Set struck a grievous blow, damaging Horus's left eye, the symbol that would become ancient Egypt's most powerful protective amulet. Horus endured the pain, his divine essence faltering but unbroken. Yet this prince wasn't going down without a fight. With fierce resolve, Horus countered with a powerful strike that left Set weakened. Both gods were left exhausted, their powers strained. The wise god Thoth arrived to find them battered and weary. He carefully restored Horus's eye with his healing magic, creating mythology's most enduring symbol. The restored Eye of Horus became the ultimate emblem of protection against chaos. The symbolism runs deep here. Horus's eye represented divine kingship, protection, and royal power. Its damage and restoration mirrored the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that governed Egyptian cosmology. Every pharaoh would wear this symbol, claiming the protection of the falcon god who endured great trials to claim his throne. Pretty intense origin story for what became ancient Egypt's most recognizable icon. The gods had seen enough conflict. Ra, the sun god and ultimate authority, called for a final assembly of the Ennead. The divine council was exhausted from the endless trials and fierce combat. Even immortal beings have their limits, and this succession crisis had dragged on for decades. Ra stood before the assembled gods, his solar crown blazing with authority that none dared challenge. The testimonies were heard one final time. Isis pleaded her son's case with the passion of a mother and the wisdom of a goddess. She reminded the court that Horus was Osiris's rightful heir, born of legitimate divine marriage. Set argued his case too, claiming his strength and experience made him the better ruler. But his aggressive actions had damaged his reputation severely. Thoth, the god of wisdom and justice, presented the evidence with characteristic precision. He had witnessed the contests, recorded the victories, and analyzed the divine law. His verdict was clear. Horus had proven himself through both trials and suffering. The legitimate bloodline trumped brute force. The restoration of his eyes symbolized his readiness to see and judge with divine wisdom. Ra made his judgment with the weight of cosmic authority. Horus would rule the living world as king of Egypt. Set would be banished to the desert, becoming god of storms, chaos, and foreign lands. This wasn't just punishment. It was cosmic balance in action. Every kingdom needs both order and chaos, civilization and wilderness. The two gods would maintain this balance for eternity. The coronation was magnificent beyond description. Horus received the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, the crook and flail of kingship, and the divine serpent that would adorn every pharaoh's brow. The gods blessed him with the power to maintain Ma'at, cosmic order and justice. From this moment forward, every human ruler would be his earthly embodiment. But here's the fascinating twist. Set wasn't completely defeated. He became Ra's protector during the sun god's nightly journey through the underworld. Every night, Set would battle the chaos serpent Apophis to ensure the sun would rise again. Even in exile, he served a crucial cosmic function. Sometimes the best way to handle a troublemaker is to give them a really important job. Every pharaoh who ever ruled Egypt became Horus incarnate the moment they touched the crown. This wasn't just political theater. Ancient Egyptians believed their king literally transformed into the falcon god during coronation ceremonies. The pharaoh's Horus name was the first and most important of their 5 royal titles. Talk about job requirements. Imagine having to become a god just to clock in for work. The coronation rituals were incredibly elaborate. The new pharaoh would enter the temple as a mortal and emerge as Horus reborn. Priests performed the opening of the mouth ceremony, symbolically giving the king divine breath and speech. Sacred oils anointed his body, transforming human flesh into divine essence. The double crown physically connected him to both Upper and Lower Egypt, making him the living embodiment of national unity. Royal titulature reflected this divine transformation perfectly. The pharaoh's Horus name was written inside a serac, a rectangular frame topped with a falcon. This wasn't just decoration, it was a magical formula that invoked Horus's protection and power. The king's other names connected him to various gods, but the Horus name was always first and most sacred. The relationship between divine and earthly kingship was beautifully complex. As Horus, the pharaoh was responsible for maintaining Ma'at throughout the kingdom. This meant ensuring justice, prosperity, and cosmic order. Every royal decree carried divine authority because Horus himself was issuing the commands. Every military victory proved the king's divine favor and strength. Palace life reflected this divine status in fascinating ways. The pharaoh couldn't be seen eating or using the bathroom. Gods don't have such mortal needs. Court protocols treated the king as literally divine, with elaborate purification rituals and ceremonial procedures. Even the royal family had to approach the pharaoh with the reverence due to a living god. Death didn't end the pharaoh's divine role. It transformed it. When a pharaoh died, he became Osiris in the afterlife, while his successor became the new Horus on earth. This created an eternal cycle of divine kingship that lasted for over 3,000 years. Every pyramid, every royal tomb, every succession ceremony reinforced this mythological foundation. The genius of this system was its stability. Rebellions against the pharaoh weren't just political, they were attacks on cosmic order itself. Who wants to fight a god? This divine kingship model was so successful that it influenced royal ideology throughout the ancient world. Even today, we can see echoes of this concept in various forms of ceremonial monarchy. Horus wasn't just one god. He was an entire divine family with multiple personalities and roles. Ancient Egyptians worshipped at least a dozen different forms of Horus, each with distinct characteristics and powers. Think of it as the original superhero franchise, with each version adapted for different audiences and needs. The most important distinction was between Horus the Elder and Horus the Younger, two completely different deities who shared the same name. Horus the Elder, Osiris, was the original sky god, brother to Osiris and Set rather than their nephew. This version was ancient even by Egyptian standards, dating back to the very earliest dynasties. He ruled the heavens as a cosmic falcon whose eyes were the sun and moon. When he blinked, eclipses occurred. When he cried, rain fell on the earth below. Horus the Younger, Harpocrates, was the son of Isis and Osiris we've been following in our story. Usually depicted as a child or young man, he represented kingship, protection, and the triumph of order over chaos. This version became the template for all pharaohs and the most politically important form of the god. Every royal statue and temple relief showing divine kingship featured this Horus. Regional variations added even more complexity to Horus worship. In Edfu, he was the great falcon who battled Set across the skies. The magnificent temple of Edfu, one of the best preserved in all Egypt, celebrates this version with incredible artistic detail. In Kam Ombo, he shared worship space with Sobek, the crocodile god. Imagine that divine roommate situation. Harpocrates became especially popular during the Ptolemaic period when Greek rulers adopted Egyptian religious practices. He was often shown as a chubby child with his finger to his lips, symbolizing the silence of divine wisdom. This image spread throughout the Roman Empire, influencing early Christian iconography and medieval art. Your local museum probably has at least one statue of this version. Temple cults developed their own unique traditions around Horus worship. Priests maintained sacred falcons in temple aviaries, believing these birds were living manifestations of the god. The annual Triumph of Horus festivals reenacted his victory over Set with elaborate processions and ritual dramas. These celebrations could last for weeks, bringing together thousands of pilgrims from across Egypt. The evolution of Horus worship across different periods shows how adaptable this god was. During the New Kingdom, he merged with Ra to become Ra-Harakti, the sun god of the horizon. In the late period, he took on more protective and healing aspects as Egyptians faced foreign invasions. Each era found new ways to interpret and worship the falcon god, keeping his cult alive for over 3 millennia. The Horus myth didn't stay in Egypt. It spread across the ancient world like divine wildfire. Greek and Roman writers were fascinated by the story of the god who died and was reborn, the divine child hidden from enemies, and the cosmic battle between good and evil. Sound familiar? These themes would echo through numerous other mythologies and religious traditions. The story was just too good to stay put. Early Christian communities in Egypt drew clear parallels between Horus and Jesus. Both were divine children born under miraculous circumstances. Both had to hide from enemies who wanted to kill them. Both represented the triumph of good over evil and the promise of eternal life. While scholars debate the extent of direct influence, the similarities are striking enough to suggest cross-cultural exchange of ideas. Archaeological evidence keeps revealing new aspects of Horus worship. Recent excavations have uncovered falcon mummies, elaborate temple complexes, and royal artifacts bearing the Horus name. The famous Narmer palette, one of Egypt's oldest historical artifacts, shows the pharaoh as Horus defeating his enemies. Every new discovery adds pieces to our understanding of how central this god was to Egyptian civilization. Modern fascination with Egyptian mythology keeps Horus alive in contemporary culture. He appears in movies, video games, comic books, and fantasy novels. The Eye of Horus remains one of the world's most recognizable symbols, appearing on everything from jewelry to tattoos to corporate logos. Not bad for a god who's been dead for over 1,000 years. This ancient falcon still captures imaginations and inspires artists across the globe, proving that truly great stories are indeed eternal. The story of Horus represents one of humanity's most enduring archetypes: the rightful heir who must fight to reclaim what was stolen, the young hero who overcomes impossible odds, and the just ruler who brings order from chaos. For over 3 millennia, Egyptian pharaohs drew their legitimacy from this ancient tale, transforming a myth of family conflict into the bedrock of royal power. What makes Horus's story so compelling isn't just its drama, but its profound understanding of leadership and justice. The Egyptians recognized that true kingship isn't inherited through bloodline alone. It must be earned through struggle, proven through trial, and maintained through the constant battle against the forces of disorder. Every pharaoh who wore the double crown was expected to be Horus reborn, fighting Set's chaos with Ma'at's order. The influence of this mythology extends far beyond ancient Egypt. Scholars have noted striking parallels between Horus and other dying and rising god figures throughout the ancient world, suggesting these stories tap into something universal about human nature and our need for heroes who triumph over death and injustice. The Eye of Horus remains one of the world's most recognizable symbols, and Egyptian mythology continues to captivate audiences in everything from blockbuster movies to modern literature. Whether you see Horus as literal divine truth or powerful symbolic narrative, his story reminds us that the greatest battles are often fought not with armies, but with principles: justice against corruption, order against chaos, hope against despair. The falcon still soars, and the eternal king still watches over those who seek to rule with wisdom and protect the innocent. If you enjoyed diving into this epic tale of divine drama and ancient power, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the mythologies that shaped our world. The gods have many more stories to tell.